Florida wanted to be the American dream, but right now they're looking like a foreclosure notice. So last month in Florida, 15%. Oh, yeah, that's right, 15% of home purchases fell through. That is the highest July cancellation rate on record. And out of the top 5 cities that deals got canceled the most, 3 of them were in Florida. The only city doing worse is San Antonio, Texas at number 1. And remember, a couple of years ago, everybody and their mama was running to Florida and Texas. They were talking about, it's freedom, it's land, low taxes, sunshine, margaritas on the beach. Well, now, buyers are backing out now like they just realized that most of these homes come with a lifetime supply of hurricanes, insurance premium, and Ron DeSantis speeches. Now let's zoom out for a second. Cause see, when a house sale falls through, it's not just about the house. That's a loss of tax revenue for the community, which means less money for your schools, your roads, and your libraries. And when the bottom falls out in housing, it doesn't stop there. It spills over into technology, tourism, small business, everything. This is why I've been telling you guys elections matter and leadership matters. Because when you act like government doesn't matter, when you think policy is just background noise, the bottom won't just fall out of the real estate market. It's going to fall out of your entire community. So yeah, Florida wanted to sell you paradise, but what y'all looking at now looks a lot more like paradise lost.
Hey, it's Joe from Georgia. So if you want a good measure of how the housing market is doing in the United States, if you want to look for one that's doing really poor, all you got to do is look very closely at Florida. In Lee County, Florida alone, in southwest Florida, 24,000 homes are on the market. Now, Lee County, Florida only has a population of 800,000. And to have 24,000 homes on the market is telling you there's a lot of desperation getting ready to go on there. Because, first of all, they're not going to be able to sell all those houses. Next thing they're going to have to do is reduce the prices ridiculously to get rid of them. Because what has happened is the rental market has fallen down in Florida. The Airbnb market has fallen. And a lot of this has to do with the current administration and their stance on a lot of things, to include their hatred toward Canadians. Because Canadians, folks, make up a huge part of the population in South Florida. They own those homes. They're getting rid of those houses. So what they're doing in turn is crashing the market on the prices. People are going to lose so much value in their homes. And this is all directly related to this administration and the policies that they're putting out. Now, this is just the beginning of that, and Florida is going to suffer worse than anyone because of the types of housing they do, because there's a lot of second homes there. But, folks, the crash is happening in the housing market in Florida. So if you're thinking about moving to Florida and buying a home, if you want one for cheap, go down there. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to afford the homeowner's insurance down there, because it's ridiculous because of hurricanes and other weather phenomenons that go there. So, okay, this is what you get. This is what you voted for. And the housing market is crashing in Florida.
Here's an article that came out that said South Florida homes for sale quadruple as residents leave en masse. Florida housing market is cooked. Let me explain. So it's no secret that I'll be moving out of Atlanta, Georgia here soon, and probably moving somewhere in southern Florida. Probably be moving to Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, Aventura area. And I used to live in Miami 2020 to 2022. Now, during this time, housing prices were selling 30, 40, 50% over asking, which was insane. And while I was down there, I documented my time in Miami, how I felt about Miami environment. And I also documented the ridiculous increase in my rent and housing prices and HOA costs. It was astronomical, and I knew for a fact this was not sustainable. So I did post a couple of videos talking about the Florida housing market will be crashing soon, and it got 2-3 million views, and everybody was saying like, oh, you're a car dealer, you're a car salesman, you don't know anything about the housing market. Most of the real estate agents anyways in Southern Florida were in car sales to begin with, or they were a bottle girl or stripper. So if you're gonna take your advice from anybody, I'm sure I've probably taken more math classes than most people combined. And that's not throwing shade to anybody. Anybody in sales has an agenda to make as many sales and sell as many things as possible to make the most money. So real estate agents will always have this narrative. Real estate agents will always paint the narrative that now is the best time to buy, now is the best time to get in, now is the best time to invest, so that way they can sell more homes. But unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't fit the narrative of what is actually happening in the market, which is above most of our heads. As we see this, today's market doesn't make any sense. But I digress to say there's no shade. If you were in car sales, or if you were a bottle girl, whatever it is to be a real estate agent, all I'm saying is numbers don't lie. And I'm so glad that I did not buy when I was in Miami, because right now the price cuts, whether you're buying or renting, is insane, and inventory has shot through the roof. South Florida's housing market is undergoing a sharp reversal as the number of homes for sale climbs to its highest level in nearly a decade, quadrupling since 2022, where inventory was super low. It was a very competitive market. Houses were selling 30, 40, 50, 60% over asking. Real estate analysts say that the surge is driven by a drop in demand and a wave of homeowners deciding to sell amid rising costs and stagnant affordability. And a lot of experts are saying that Florida's housing market is beginning to undergo what experts describe as a correction. 15% year over year increase in home for sales as inventory is drastically increasing. Price cut $100,000. Price cut $45,000. Price cut $20,000. This one was insane. You can own this house as a co-owner for 1/8 of the house for $689,000. That has nothing to do with the real estate market. I just thought that was interesting. Here's a house in Boca, $100,000 price cut. I say this to say that everything that goes up must come down. I think this correction is very much needed, and I'm probably going to rent when I move back into Southern Florida, South Florida. South Florida, Southern Florida, it's all because I do see home prices continuing in a downward trend for the midterm. And it might be a good opportunity for people to start buying in. So we'll see. But anyways, Florida housing market, told you, the crash/correction was imminent, and it is happening.
B downturn is starting to cause big issues in Florida's housing market, particularly here in Orlando.
Yes, more and more houses are starting to sit in Orlando. Houses that were Airbnbs are now going up for sale because the action's not in Orlando anymore. And as you'll see in the video, please watch the rest of that video. Inventory is soaring in Orlando. So Orlando's got soaring inventory, more inventory being added on every single week, and you got just a pullback of buyers. There is just very little buying going on in Orlando. So let me ask you a question. With inventory climbing, inventory being added on weekly, and just no sales going through, what do you think is going to happen to the Orlando market over the next 6 months, 12 months, let's say the next 2 or 3 years? Orlando's in trouble, and so is some other areas in Florida. Like and follow right here, and I'll go through all the things that are going on with Florida and real estate in that area. Like and follow.
Hey friends, so could we see a $1 trillion real estate market collapse in Florida? Well, according to famed remote viewer Stephen Schwartz, yes, and he thinks sooner rather than later. And when I heard this from him, I was like, wow, that sucks, because he has a great track record of making like these future forecast predictions. And I was like, okay, well, maybe way down the road. But he's saying sooner, and I'm seeing some things that are concerning me that might be confirming what he thinks. So let me tell you what I see here on the ground. I live in Florida, surrounded by, $10 to $15 million homes here. And I've lived here a long time. So some things that I notice. Now, there is precedent for this. In 2006/7, we had a major crash where home values went down 50% across the state. It was crazy. Times were tough. People were hurting. And since then, or after that, it was pretty stable. But then the pandemic happened and everything got turned upside down. So in a nutshell, this is what happened during the pandemic. We had all of the snowbirds that already lived here and that were moving here, because snowbirds always move to Florida. We had all of these young people come out of nowhere, younger professionals and families that had remote jobs that, lived in places like New York and California, and that sucked during the pandemic, so they wanted to get out of there, so they all moved to Florida because Florida was open and it was sunny and warm and everyone was having fun here, right? So everyone and their mom moved to Florida. It was crazy. And they were so used to overpaying back in California and New York, so they started overpaying for everything here. They drove the price up like crazy. And then all these damn greedy investors came in and started snatching up everything else and then turning everything into these short-term rentals. Like all these beautiful homes up here are all empty. No one lives there, right? They just bought these homes, they turn them into short-term rentals, and they rent them out like hotels. Well, that was all fine and dandy during the peak of the pandemic, right? Because this place was lit up. It was on fire. There's people everywhere. Now no one can afford to come here because the prices are so insane. They have to charge so much to rent these places because they paid so much for them. No one can afford it. So regular people can't afford to live in Florida anymore. They all got kicked out and bought out by the investors. The snowbirds are dying off because that's what happens. High turnover rate. You know, you have a lot of snowbirds come down here to retire. They pass. Right? Then we had a bunch of these young people that were moving out here from New York and California, a place like that. And then a lot of them went back home. They all left, you know. The younger people are leaving Florida in droves. At one point, more people were moving to Florida than any other state. Now more people are leaving Florida than any other state. So we have a ton of open inventory from snowbirds that have passed and from the younger people that have left and from the short-term rentals that are just sitting here completely vacant, right? Then on top of all that, the greedy developers said, ooh, lots of people are moving to Florida. So they started building everywhere, chopping down our beautiful forest, like knocking down old, cool Florida homes and building monster mansions, and just started building everywhere. So every single place that you can imagine in Florida is being built. Okay, just crazy. The whole like pave over paradise and turn it into a parking lot, except they're paving over paradise and turning it into gigantic $10 million empty houses. Okay, so we have a crap ton of inventory. Like during the pandemic, like I know a lot of realtors, and like you would go to like open houses and like there would be like standing room only at open houses. Like there would be, I think the statistic was there was 3 buyers for every 1 house in Florida during the pandemic. And now there's something like 10 houses for every 1 buyer. Okay, so it's totally flipped. It went from a seller's market to a buyer's market. There is so much inventory because they built so much. There's so many foreclosures. Older people have passed and younger people have sold. So there is a crap ton of inventory in Florida and it's at an insane price. So no one can afford it. So what's going to happen? I mean, property values, we haven't even gone into taxes. All that stuff is insane. Like it's really, really, really hard to live in Florida right now unless you make a crazy amount of money. And like people that moved here from California and New York, so many of the complaints were, it's too damn hot. I mean, it's February right now. And I mean, I'm getting a sunburn out here, right? So it's hot here. The animals are out of control, you know, between the bugs and the alligators and snakes and everything. People are kind of crazy. And, you know, it's a different vibe. It's a very chill vibe. I love Florida because it's chill. But people that moved here from California and New York, they're like, man, it's boring here. They like a little more action, a little more things to do. Here, it's a little bit more of a retirement vibe. Younger people that are tech savvy, people that are like more startup minded, they don't like it because there's not a lot of like motivation and inspiration here. People are a little more on island time. So it's not for everybody. I like those things. A lot of people don't. So what do we have? We have a market here that is like completely overinflated. It's not even funny. And like, it's going to crash. It's just going to crash. I've been saying this for years. Everyone said I was crazy. When you ask realtors this here, they'll tell you you're crazy. They're like, no, it's the best time to ever live in Florida. All that stuff is lies. No. The realtors here are completely delusional, okay? It is a bad time here. And I'm saying all this not because I'm happy. I'm not happy at all. I have a marketing business here. Everyone here makes money off tourism in some way, right? So we don't want any of this to happen. But I was cautioning people the whole time. I was saying, dude, like, stop being so greedy. Just stop. Everyone, just let's just pause. Let's chill. I mean, I'm watching people buy homes for $200,000 and then sell them for $1 million. They didn't do anything. They didn't flip it. They didn't renovate it. They just bought it and then sold it. I'm like, dude, you're just making it to where normal people can't live here. And it's just everything's owned by BlackRock. And then BlackRock and those people don't even want to be here anymore because they're not making a return on their investment. So now we just have shells of houses, shells of neighborhoods, shells of towns. It's crazy. They completely destroyed Florida. And this needs to be a lesson to everybody. So when I heard Stephen Schwartz make his prediction that there could be a $1 trillion collapse, I was like, well, how could that happen? Well, all the things I just laid out is how. Then put on top of that the insurance thing. Okay, so after Hurricane Andrew, they created something called Citizens Insurance, and they said, hey, we're going to give you affordable insurance in Florida. This insurance is not affordable in Florida. And then that company, Citizens, basically went under last year. And they did this thing called depopulation. I don't know why they call it that. And they got rid of like 800,000 policies. And now all those people don't have insurance, or they had to go to these like slimy new startups. One of them is run by the guys that did Enron. I mean, come on. So the insurance thing is like a house of cards. The next time there's a big storm, a catastrophic hurricane, and does terrible damage, I think that there's going to be like a collapse of the insurance industry here in Florida, which is going to lead to the real estate collapse. I see it. I just see it. So that's going to be, you know, the straw that breaks the camel's back. All these things I just laid out here is the setup. It's building towards that. I can feel it. I can see it. It's not good. The numbers are bad. There's way less people moving to Florida, way more people moving out of Florida. There's way more foreclosures. There's way more unlivable condos that they keep finding that are like, you know, neglected. There's people that come here and they like build a house and never live in it. And then when they go to sell it, they find out it's covered in mold because everything's covered in mold here. There's all sorts of crazy problems like that. And then all it takes is one big hurricane to hit Tampa or Miami or something like that and find out that all these insurance companies are full of shit. And there's going to be this mass exodus of people out of Florida. That's what Stephen Schwartz with his remote viewing saw. He saw a mass exodus out of Florida after this $1 trillion collapse. Now, will that happen? I don't know. I hope not. I mean, I live here, right? But all the ingredients are there. Like, it's all there. And it's obvious for anyone who's paying attention. But evidently, there's not a lot of people paying attention here. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think, and I'll leave you with a beautiful Florida sunset. Have a beautiful day.